Okay, so let's talk more about what uncertainties are difficult to tolerate. So maybe we can have each person answer both questions, and then we'll have the group talk about it. So what uncertainties in life are difficult for you to tolerate, and how does that contribute to anticipatory anxiety for you? Scout, can you go first?
Sure. So as far as uncertainty, are you talking about like OCD type uncertainty, or just things in life that are harder for me to cope with uncertainty about?
What's the difference for you?
So like my OCD right now is primarily relationship OCD, and it used to be completely intolerable for me to handle any amount of uncertainty about my marriage, like because I would have thoughts, I'm afraid what, I don't really love my wife, or what if I meet her but I don't really love her, and this was just, those thoughts would just terrify me to the point of not really being able to do much except for to go to work and come home. And so I've gotten better at that by coming to huddle and doing, using the strategies that we talk about. And then just like normal uncertainty, I tend to do things in a routinized manner. So I'm somebody that really likes to know what's going to happen ahead of time. So like meeting a new client could cause me a lot of anticipatory anxiety because I don't know how the relationship's going to be until I go and start it. So something as small as that, or if there's a change in the schedule in the day, like I'm expecting something to happen, and then all of a sudden there's a change and I have to like drive Brooke to theater, and I wasn't expecting to have to do that. Like handling that uncertainty before I get everything rearranged can cause a lot of distress too.
Yeah, so I would frame up both of those as part of OCD, but in a slightly different way. So I appreciate you saying it that way. So OCD, in terms of its function, is unwanted intrusive thoughts that arrive with a spike of anxiety and the urge to do something to make them go away. So a thought like, what if I don't love my wife, that arrives with a spike of anxiety, and then the urge to fix it, maybe in the way that I think about it, or I don't know. Can you give me an example of what else you used to do?
Yeah, I would want to remember like with certain like times where I felt really connected or that I was sure. And then sometimes I would compare the thoughts I was having to other types of OCD to make sure that it was OCD and that it wasn't an actual true thought.
Great. So those are really great examples of mental compulsions, and that's really thinking that's functioning like OCD. Intolerance of uncertainty is an underlying cognitive vulnerability that makes OCD more likely. So intolerance of uncertainty sounds more like what you were saying before, where I have trouble like any kind of new situation, meeting new people, having a different schedule in the day, even for some people, eating different foods or watching different things on TV, anything that's potentially going to end in a way that you're uncertain about can make you feel uncomfortable or like it's intolerable. So that trait just makes you more likely to have an anxious reaction if you have unwanted intrusive thoughts. Do you have any thoughts about that, Scott?
No, that I think that really fits. The kind of just always having an intolerance to uncertainty and new things, and then kind of falls in line with some of my OCD content and how difficult it was to deal with.
Thank you for sharing that. Sophie, how about you?
I think it's for me a lot of like content around harm and harm OCD, and not being able to tolerate if there was a potential for me to harm someone through like my actions or my inaction. I think that is like I don't know, when you were asking like, what areas of uncertainty do you have in my head? I'm just like, that's like all I can think of, because I think all my OCD ends up coming back to that at some point, like that core fear. And I think actually I should say too, another core fear is just that like around my mental health, and that like I can't rely on my mental health to be stable. That's like newer content I've had where I question like doing certain things. Like I just bought a car and I had a really hard time deciding to buy it, not because of like financial side of things, but like because it requires me to like stay at a job and like, or stay employed, and doesn't really like, I don't know, forces me to commit to something, like committing to myself that my mental health is going to be well enough for a certain period of time, to pay off the car. So I think those are both where I have uncertainty.
Yeah, that was a great exposure that you did. And I would frame that up as exposure against your fear that your mental health won't be stable enough for you to maintain your job and therefore pay for your car. What was it like to talk about that?
I think I'm so used to like having harm OCD that having different OCD related is just like, oh, like it just, it wants me to like analyze it more. I feel like I'm like, okay, what is that core fear? What am I trying to get through by that? And I think they're kind of interrelated, where it's like I recognize that my core fear is harm, and because it's so deep in everything I do and working with patients all day, it kind of comes out in various ways every day. Um, Makes me question whether my mental health will be good enough. So they're kind of interrelated.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Can you tell what makes it so difficult to tolerate uncertainty about potentially harming someone?
I think just because like I'm relatively new at what I do as far as like being in the healthcare field. So I think I just always assume, I think that's a combination of that, which is like a real trigger for me, like I should be really careful in what I'm doing. But I think it gets more complicated because I have OCD. So it's hard for me sometimes to like differentiate between like, okay, I should really be, careful when I do this technique or this treatment versus like, it's fine. Like the worst thing that will happen is X, Y, and Z. It's just, it's hard for me to like, I get mixed up in stakes versus odds. Um, and I think that's a combination of being new and also just having OCD by itself.
Yeah, that completely makes sense to me. So your part of it is developmental, where you're still learning everything that you have to do to be good at your job. And in the presence of the uncertainty that comes with doing something new, your thoughts also get sticky around like, what if I harm someone through my action or my inaction right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Larissa?
My OCD mainly focuses around contamination, health issues, fear of, I think some harm. I'm understanding harm OCD differently, and I think for me it's more like, well, say for instance, I got COVID and I didn't know it, and I would give it to somebody. I had initially with the pandemic, that was a huge fear, either that I would get it and die, or that I wouldn't know I had it and I'd give it to one of my family members and they would die and it would be my fault. And I too worked in healthcare for years, and they're always underlying, not always, but a great deal of the time, was the fear that even if I was doing a good job, which I felt like I was, other than when my OCD took over or when my anxiety took over, I felt like I wasn't doing a good job. I was always at risk of making a mistake, and that risk or that mistake would harm someone, even though my intention was to do the best I could. It was always a fear underneath that I'll overlook something, I'll neglect to do something, and then when the anxiety got worse, I'd fear that I'd be so anxious, I actually would make a mistake because I was anxious, and it would, brought on lots and lots of intrusive thoughts. And recently I've said, I wish I knew then what I know now. Not that it would make the anxiety, it wouldn't go away, but I think I would know how to handle it better when the intrusive thought.
And what specifically would you be doing differently?
Well, like I have a lot of anticipatory anxiety about anything unknown, especially if it relates to another person, and I would, when I get that whoosh of anxiety, I can tell myself now, okay, that the dread I'm feeling, the fear I'm feeling with the whoosh of anxiety, that's just it. It's a fear, it's a thought, but it's not a prediction. It's not a prediction that something bad's going to happen, or it's not a prediction that I could do something bad. And then I've been trying to practice good self-talk. Like I would hope that if that happened in a working situation, if I was working, I'd be able to say, I'm qualified at this job. I'm qualified to do this task. That's why I'm being asked to do it, and just follow through. And even though I'm not working, like I was reading over our weekly, the newsletter you send out, and my mind was just going, a lot of intrusive thoughts about this vaccine. I might have a horrible reaction and die, and finally, I went ahead and said, that's just a feeling, that's dread. And then I actually said to myself, yeah, I guess I could die. Anything could happen because there's no way of knowing until after I get that vaccine. But, and I just let myself sit with it. And that's a good example of when that kind of thing happens. I just want to go for a long, long run, which is helpful sometimes, but I'm learning that it's also helpful for me to just sit with it and let it pass, and then go for a run or a jog.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're seeing the anticipatory anxiety as a feeling, not a factor prediction, which is great. And
Right.
Therefore, when you get that adrenaline that comes from the fight or flight, you're just allowing that to swoosh through your body, but not doing anything to make it go away. That would teach your brain really that it was actually a threat. So that's really great also. And then continuing to go forward with the behavior and living with the possibility that something awful truly does happen. Not that you wanted to, but you're saying, yep, this is something that I can live with in choosing to move forward is a really great surrender. So it sounds like you're doing everything right there. Thank you so much for that example. Jared, can you go next?
Yeah, my content area is, both ADHD and OCD. And, with OCD, I just always had uncertainty with myself, just uncertainty about everything, especially with my, I feel like I also have imposter syndrome. Can I actually do the things that I claim that I do? Just a lot of issues when it comes to, especially with my self-identity. And so, gosh, right now I'm just forgetting my train of thought.
You were talking about the uncertainties that are difficult to tolerate?
Yeah. And so, especially when it comes with the future, when it deals with the future, like, can I actually do this? Can I actually go forth with the plan that I kind of set for myself? Especially in the more immediate future right now, I just had my first semester of school finished and I'm starting my second semester, and I'm just so happy and I'm just so proud of myself that I was actually able to finish my first semester on a very strong note. And I don't know, right now, the uncertainty that sits inside me is can I actually keep this up? And can I actually keep this going? Especially with some of the distractions that I, currently have right now when it comes to my personal finances and just other things, just being at home all the time right now because of COVID, and, just all those thoughts just kind of rise up. So, for that, it's, that's the immediate, anxiety that I do feel right now. Intermediate, I'm not quite sure. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good example of like just in general, I'm engaging in healthy behaviors, but how do I know I can keep that up? I think is a question that a lot of people have as they start to engage in behavior change. And so the reality of the answer is like you can't know with certainty. That's certainly an uncertainty that you have to tolerate along the way.